This is an excerpt from the Acres and Watts slideshow, version 2.2. In the full deck, we show the amazing gains we can make with energy efficiency and with distributed generation of electricity. This is the low-hanging fruit that doesn't really involve massive infrastructure. But we still find that we need utility-scale renewables if we're to stop using coal for electricity and stave off the worst effects of climate change. So in this excerpt, we'll look at one plan. This was a plan generated by Google several years ago. And we focus on two things. We look at the area associated with offshore wind development and the area associated with large-scale solar facilities. So under this one plan, and there are many plans, but this one suggests that we can get 80 gigawatts. That's about 10% of the electricity we get today from non-fossil fuel sources. So this plan suggests 80 gigawatts from offshore wind. So we'll tell this story, we'll show what it looks like by looking at one particular facility. This is the Cape Wind project, still in proposal stages off the coast of Massachusetts. You can see roughly where it's located. And here with this map, you can see it's a big facility. It would be a very big facility. You can see it from the distance, and you can see its size and scale relative to the islands nearby. And in order to get 80 gigawatts of offshore wind, we would need 190 of these farms. You can see 420 megawatts. In order to get 80 gigawatts, you've got to get 190 of these farms. Now, Cape Wind is a project it's been in developmental stages for roughly 10 years. So we have to find ways, obviously, to develop these faster if possible. So if you put all of these plants together, which you would never do, if you put them all in one place, it would take 950 linear miles. It would be 16% of the coastline of the United States. Now, you would never put them together like that. But this is a reminder that if we're going to do this, it's going to take up a lot of space. It's going to have impacts. But what do we mean by big impacts? Here's another way of thinking about it. So instead of showing it linear miles, we show it here with square miles. We compress it all in one place and put it in the Gulf of Mexico. Now again, you would never do this. You would never put it all in one place, but we're trying to show scale here. It would take up 4,700 miles, almost 5,000 square miles. So to do this, to get this much wind from these offshore plants would have a huge impact. But what do we mean by huge impacts? Here you can see in May of 2010, we shut off almost 7,000 square miles to fishing because of the BP oil spill. A month later, in June of 2010, we shut off 88,000 square miles to fishing because of the BP oil spill. And what this suggests is that the American coastline is going to look different one way or another. It's going to look different because of deliberate choices we make to stave off the worst effects of climate change, or it's going to continue to change because of habit, because of mistakes. And here's another way to look at this. By the end of this century, around 2100, with a 3-foot sea level rise, we would have 25,000 square miles in the lower 48. They'd be underwater. That's an area roughly the size of West Virginia. Now, there is a lot of debate about the level of sea level rise that might be projected, but a 3-foot sea level rise, 1 meter, is a relatively conservative projection for the end of this century if we continue to burn carbon at our current rate. So, again, what is huge impact? If we do make 180 of these kinds of plants, we'll have a big impact. That's absolutely true. But there are other kinds of impact that have to do with havoc, that have to do with real loss that we could face if we don't make deliberate choices and make them soon. So then we take a look at concentrated solar, and here we move to a different geography. We're focusing mostly on the American Southwest. So we do that again by looking at one particular place. You can see the gray area there is the Mojave Desert, covers several states. And then you also see the SEGS plant, which is a large-scale solar plant that was built in the 1990s, and it generates 354 megawatts of power. And these plants, if you haven't seen them before, are huge. You can see those are little tiny humans there in the middle of that shot. These things, they're massive. It's a 6-mile walk around this one facility. And to be clear, there's no biodiversity there whatsoever. It's like a giant parking lot. And again, if we say, let's take that one technology and see how many of these things we would need to get the 80 gigawatts of concentrated solar power. So here you can see there's various technologies. It would always be good to use a variety of technologies to hit our goals. The SEGS plant there, which uses solar troughs, it's about 1,600 acres. So if we were to use that one technology, we need 225 of those plants. But we, of course, want different technologies. So here what I've done is I've averaged it out to about roughly 500,000 acres. That's probably close to what it would take to generate 80 gigawatts of concentrated solar power. So again, what does 500,000 square miles mean? So there's different ways of looking at it. If you put it all in one place, which of course you would never do, it's 3% of the Mojave Desert. If you put a third of it in the Mojave, which is much more likely, it'd be about 1% of the Mojave. So those are the percentages that we're talking about. And here in this case, we're trying to use percentages to keep the comparison of different trade-offs consistent. So what does that mean? You know, in the Mojave, there's all kinds of other uses that are already at play. 15% of the desert is already being used by the military for testing. 28% is set aside as national monuments and national parks. 10% is designated for wilderness. There's not a lot of space that hasn't been claimed already in the Mojave. So even finding 1% of the Mojave or 3% of the Mojave would be really difficult. But then we look at other kinds of regional impacts. So to compare 1% of the Mojave, if we lose that to development, which would be horrible and excruciating and difficult, but let's look at other potential impacts. The best projections from the IPCC say that with each 1 degree centigrade of warming, 10% of global species everywhere could disappear. Best projections show by the end of this century, 40% of the rainfall in the Southwest would disappear, and this is under moderate climate projections. So 3% or 1%, these are huge impacts. But what do we mean by huge impacts? What's our framework? How are we thinking about these issues? The American landscape, the American deserts, they will look different at the end of this century based on what we do. They'll look different in small ways because of deliberate choices we have made to stave off the worst effects of climate change, or they will look different in huge ways because we were unwilling to act and unwilling to act quickly. And those are the trade-offs that we face. So that's it in this excerpt. For more information, it'd be great if you go to climateofhope.org. You can see the rest of the slide deck and other excerpts. Thank you.